Welcome to the Ag Inspo podcast, where we delve into the dynamic world of agriculture, uncovering the stories that inspire, empower, and drive change. Join hosts Rena Striegel and Rabou as they explore the journeys of farmers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are making a difference as they navigate the critical work of transitioning their operation to the next generation. From navigating family dynamics to developing the next generation of ag leaders, we'll bring you the insights and inspiration you need to thrive in today's ever-evolving agricultural landscape. So whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just starting out, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we learn from best practices and a few colossal failures on the Ag Inspo podcast.
Okay, everybody, it is great to be back with you. The funny thing is that we haven't actually left you. We are on our third podcast of the day. And so if you've been following along, the last two episodes, you've heard us talk about top producer, which we're not going to talk about because that is now probably about 6 weeks in the rearview mirror. But Ron, it has been really great to spend the day with you. And we, of course, have spoken to some amazing people. And this podcast is going to be no different. I am super excited to have our guest with us today because he is someone that I have known for a little bit now and have been following along with what he and his company are attempting to do. And the cool thing is it is probably solving one of the bigger sort of on-farm management challenges facing farmers, which is managing their landlord relationships. And so I am really very excited to have Shashi with us today to tell us what's going on with Oaken Ag and to just get a little bit of a progress report about where they're at. So it's just welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you. And I guess we should just open up, because you have a very tongue twistery name. I was going to have Ron attempt to introduce you, but I think we won't do that. I think I will just have you introduce yourself. And so
I've got this. I've got this.
Oh, Ron, I've got this.
Look, as much fun as we had before we went live, the least I can do is make an introduction here, right?
Okay,
Shashi, do you agree with that?
You go for it.
I mean, he was sprucing himself up, for the event here because we told him that he was going to be on, live video, and so anyway, we're gonna have a good time with this. But Rena, you're right. He's solving some amazing issues that are going on in the ag world, and has a company here that I think covers kind of a multifaceted area of issues and challenges that we all face in agriculture. So, Shashi Raghunandan. Did I do it right?
Yeah, absolutely. Woo.
All right, awesome. So you were completely joking around before, and I loved this actually when you were talking about it. How you said that your name has been butchered 1,000 times, and of course mine has too, but it's not near as complicated as yours is. And you said that your favorite thing is when they announce your name at the airport and they'll say your first name, and then there's a long pause, and then they'll come up with whatever they want to, what kind of butchering they want to do, and then you're just like, yep, that's me. I got you on this one. So welcome to our show, Shashi, and to just kick off, if you wouldn't mind, just take some time to share with our audience about what your background is, what you're doing, and then we'll kind of get into the weeds from there.
Yeah, no. First off, it's wonderful to kind of be on the show. Rena and I've been connected for a while, and I've had the pleasure to have met her last year, and we shared a meal together, and it was really enjoyable, and we've been in touch since. But my journey kind of into the ag industry started about 18 months ago now. And then a year before that, actually, with Purdue University, and I'll step into that in a little while here. But I spent about 20 years in banking and payments and financial services. So that's been my kind of background before I joined the Purdue team. And I spent time in various banks like JP Morgan. And the last 10 years of my career before I joined over Purdue was over at MasterCard, the credit card company. And I was doing a range of things for them in Singapore, and then moved to the US, to the East Coast about 7 years ago. Essentially setting up new business lines within MasterCard, going after completely new markets. And that got me into this entire mode of, hey, how do you build new businesses, and how do you kind of get an investment case, a business case around it, and how do you mobilize a team around it? And I got really excited, and I guess that's when I realized that that's something that really excited me, and that's something I wanted to pursue. As luck would have it, Purdue University had set up a program called Dial Ventures, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about Dial Ventures. But essentially, they're set up as a fund, a venture capital fund that invests into software companies that come out of that fund, and they want to focus on software companies in the agri-food space, in the agriculture space. And as part of that, they kind of recruit a bunch of people from diverse industries, get them in, get them talking to the industry participants. And if they like if they like some of the ideas, they end up putting money into it and spinning it off as companies, which these people end up leading. So my journey at Purdue Dial was interesting. I spent about a year there researching the concept, which eventually became Oaken. They liked it. They decided to fund it. And here we are, 18 months out, with a product in market, a couple of customers, good reviews, and making some headway here. So to Rena's earlier point, I think it's been a long journey for me, from India to Singapore, to the US, to the East Coast, and now in Indianapolis in the Midwest, and different industries, but I've enjoyed every bit of it.
So, yeah, I didn't know that you had moved to Indiana. I didn't know you were now getting a little closer to the great Midwest. Well, that's exciting. Just talk a little bit about the product, because, when you and I connected and you told me what the problem was you were attempting to solve, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that is really cool. And one that I hear a lot of farmers talk about, but have not really ever heard of a solution for that. So describe the problem as you saw it, and then let's talk about Oaken.
No, absolutely. So when I entered the Dial program, I think I was immediately drawn to, given my background in payments and financial services, I was driven to this number, $30 billion. And essentially, that's the dollars that are flowing from farms today that are leasing land for their farming operations, and kind of leasing land from landowners. And dug in further, figured out that landowners sometimes are kind of at in different parts of the US. They don't necessarily need to be where the farm is at, and this leasing operation, it can be renewed every year, and there's this whole bunch of payments that are going out every year. So my initial draw to the problem statement was from that perspective of trying to solve for a payments problem. But then, as Dial does, Purdue, they put me in touch with real farms, and I had the opportunity to speak with, several 50, 100 odd farms as part of the discovery process, trying to understand, where does the problem lie? And I think there are a couple of things to Rena, to address your point. What is the problem that we're trying to solve for? It's essentially the fact that as farms are consolidating, and as farming operations get more complex, land is the underlying asset that any farming operation is based on, and that land is actually, the number of stakeholders that are involved in that land side of the business is increasing exponentially, primarily because of two reasons. One is that the farm side, the farming operations are obviously getting larger. But also on the landowner side, there's a lot of transition that's happening in terms of land being passed on to the next generation. And I think some of the statistics are that 30% of all farmland in the US is going to be passed to the next generation in the next decade or so, which is a tremendous, transitional wealth shift that's happening. And when land does pass, you're suddenly, one landowner becomes sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes five landowners. And so when I spoke with farms, they were talking about the increasing complexity of managing these relationships, making sure they were building that bridge, not just to the existing generation of landowners, but also to the generation that was going to step in the future. And the number of those relationships that were being kind of brought to their forefront. So there's a lot of complexity in terms of land ownership. There's a lot of complexity in terms of leasing, keeping track of, when those leases were coming up, keeping track of basic things like when the birthdays and things like that were happening, keeping track of payment due dates and, when those payments were coming due and then reconciling it with the accounting system. And as the farming operations were getting larger, these Excel files and paper documents and things like that farms were traditionally using as a smaller farming operation was just not scalable anymore. And so they were looking to get systems that would help them scale their business as they were growing their business as well. So grow alongside them and help them build that relationship in a more meaningful way. So essentially, that's how Oaken came to be. We understood this problem, spoke to a lot of farms who had similar challenges. We said, we believe that there's something that can be solved for here. It's not new. It's not like, it's not been done in other industries. If you look at commercial real estate or if you look at property management, the similar challenges that have happened in the past, this is a problem that needs to be solved for ag and is imminent. And so we set up the company to do that. Along the way, we've also discovered that there are problems when it comes to, landowner farmland transition or as farms look to transition their own farming operations. So there are other adjacent problem areas, but the core of it is this landowner relationship piece and the increasing complexity of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the process of discovering that problem and then going through the process of building a tech company.
Okay. I think it's been fascinating for me, primarily for two reasons. Number one, like I said, I have had some experience building out these companies, but I've always built out, not companies, business lines, but I've always done it in the safety net of a large company, like a MasterCard or a JP Morgan or somebody like that. To be able to step out and try to build an investment case and try to secure money and funding and everything else outside of that safety net is exhilarating, but it's nerve-wracking at the same time. And so I think that's something that definitely I underwent when I did the program at Purdue. You have to have like a strong conviction in your idea, but also build conviction in others that this is the one idea to fund versus, 5 other people who are pitching for different ideas. And right. You have to make sure that investors believe that this is the one that needs progressing. So that was nerve-wracking. But I think a little bit of experience helped in that case, but also the Dial team, I think, helped with a lot of introductions. And it's great to have a support environment that's enabling you rather than trying to kind of pit you against one another. So that was a great process to actually spin that company out of. The actual act of coming up with the idea itself, Dial does a fantastic job of actually introducing you to people who should know more about the problem, making sure you're validating that problem, and making sure there are enough of those people for you to build a reasonable business case out of. So all of those checks and balances you go through as part of the Dial program. Once the company spun up, it's a whole different scenario. You've kind of got the money. You need to make sure now that all those commitments that customers have made, come through. And you're able to build a robust product and a technology that, solves for their needs. And so then it becomes balancing the 3 legs of the stool: customer, technology, product, and fundraising in investors. So that's been absolutely a roller coaster ride. There are days that you get up and it's the best day in the world, and your company's kind of got a new customer or a marquee client on the rolls, and it's all looking good and you feel good about yourself. And then the next day it's all downward spiral, and it's a constant up and down, and you can take long periods of that, but when it happens every day, it kind of takes a mental toll as well. So it's been a journey, but I've enjoyed it. I wouldn't do anything different. My move here to Indianapolis is kind of testament to the fact that I believe in this company, and I think the problem we're solving for is real, and I want to continue doing so. And hopefully we'll be in a good position.
That's awesome. That's
It kind
awesome.
of sounds like farming to me. You go from moments of complete elation to
Yeah.
moments of what in the world have I done? And right. and it's like, okay, well, you got to find the balance. You have to, in those moments of, oh dear Lord, what did I do? You have to keep in mind of maybe tomorrow will bring a little bit of brightness to it. And
Yep.
I think
Yep.
that's challenging, right, for any entrepreneur, probably.
No, that's certainly true. And yeah, I'm not taking, I think everybody will go through the same process. I have been blessed to actually, I think the industry that we operate in is a blessing in a lot of ways because people are just nice. I mean, like, I've built relationships here, which I would never have been able to build in like 20 years of, in my financial services and in the East Coast. It's just a different environment. And I think when I interact with people here, customers or, Rena yourselves or people like, other folks that I meet with, there's a genuineness, there's a willingness to help. There is, and sometimes they will say no, and that's fine too, but they're there for you when you need help in any other way. They may not buy your product, they may not give you money immediately, but they're always helping you along. And I think it's a very unique industry in that sense. And really, I'm blessed to be part of building a company in this space.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you go to raise funds
Yeah.
for a company like this, right? You've got a startup. You obviously going to take money because you have to have people that are designing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you need to have staff and you need to have resources.
Yeah.
What's the starting point of that? Like, are you just going out and having personal conversations with people you're trying to get connected to? Did you go through like a crowdfunding platform, or how did you launch that part of it? Because in my mind, that is like the most massive roadblock that I could ever even come up with, is how do you go from idea to, oh, sure, I'll give you some money.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had the answer to it, and I wish I could claim that I'm exceedingly good at it to kind of share, the best practices. But what I can do is I can share my journey. So what I have gone through and the process that I adopted and what I saw. And I hope, whoever's listening will kind of take whatever they want to out of it. But it's certainly been unique to my own, Oaken's journey that way. So I think in approaching any investor, it's the first step I kind of took was, for me, it was, I treated it as a sales process, right? I mean, you touch 100 investors, 20 of them will speak with you, 5 of them will want to speak later, and maybe 1 of them will invest in your company. Approximately. I mean, I'm throwing out some numbers there, but that's broadly what's going to happen. So the broader that you have on your sometimes it's just a mathematics game, right? So at the basic level, it's about how many people can you reach out to and how many people can you get into that funnel. The second aspect is how good are you at convincing other people that it is, when you're talking to a customer, you're selling a product, you've understood their need and you've kind of attacked that need and you've got something that gives them ROI. The investor is the same way. I mean, when you're speaking to an investor, they want to know that the money is going to come back and you are the right people to execute on the plan. So when you're speaking with them, the more you can do to convince them that you have customers, you have a product that's robust, you have a team that's high functioning, and you have a roadmap that makes sense for the future of the company, I think the better the odds of them actually believing you. And that's the next step of them saying, okay, maybe I'm interested in learning more. And maybe it aligns with their investment thesis, because each investor has their own thesis of doing things. And finally, it's about getting them over the line. Then it's just the hard logistics of chasing, and it's that grind, right? I mean, you've got these people who are interested. You just got to be a nuisance and, follow up and make sure they land one way or the other. So in many ways, Ron, I think, it's a dispassionate process. I don't get too emotionally beaten up if an investor says no. Now I've learned to take it in my stride, but there was a lot of no's before one yes. And so you got to be bracing yourself for that part of it. The other part of it is got to get creative. There is institutional capital, but there is also pools of people who have a strategic interest in your business. And the sooner, especially for our stage of company, if you're able to identify strategics, I think it's really useful. People who know what you're doing, believe in your idea and believe in you and are able to give you some early capital to get you started. So we were fortunate enough in our journey to find such strategic partners. Beyond Purdue Dial, we had some family offices who were in the farmland management space who stepped in and invested and joined our board, who made introduction to other strategic partners, who lent credibility to our brand. And so I think there are creative ways to get there, but it begins with, I think, your conviction, your product, your team, and the amount of traction that you can get. It's essentially that kind of sells your company to begin with. I mean, make it sound simple, but it's actually a lot of no's, like I said, and a lot of heartbreak before you get to that one yes. But that one yes is worth it.
Yeah. One thing that I've really noticed about your approach is that you tend to approach with a lot of questions. So instead of telling someone what you have, you are investigating what they might know and what they might need, and then you start talking about what you have. So I found it really interesting the first time we spoke because you weren't telling me all about it, but you knew what it was that I did that you could link to that product, and you had questions around what I was seeing. And I thought that was really interesting because every time I have interfaced with you, I have felt like, yes, we talked about things that have to do with this product, but I also felt like I really had a stronger and stronger friendship with you after every time we talked. I was always like, just like talking to him. It's so fun. And so I feel like, when you talk about the people, the resources, I feel like that maybe is a unique gift that you have, is that you're investing a lot of time just getting to know people before you ever have the ask, or before you ever even really talk about Oaken.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a personality thing, but I found that very useful, especially in a new industry. I'm always looking to absorb first and learn, because if I was in the payments financial industry, I would have probably gone out there and, yeah, I know what you're doing. Here's my product, sign here kind of thing. But I think it comes from the fact that I'm in a completely new place and new geography now, new location, new city, and new customers and new industry. Everything is new. And I think I'll be making a mistake if I step in there and say, I know what you guys need and here it is. So the more I can learn, the more I can understand the different facets of farming operations and business operations and the supply chain and where my product can have meaningful impact, I think the better served my company will be. So there is a selfish interest, but I have to do everything to make sure that I understand that first. So I'm glad you like that approach, and I hope I'm doing a good job of it with the rest of my clients as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Oaken just a little bit, because I'm also, I want to talk about sort of what the base model is in terms of what it's designed, because I know from talking to you that you've also evolved this product quite a bit off of like maybe ground zero. So would you like to sort of just explain what the base concept is, and then we can go into some of the new evolution of the product?
No, absolutely. Would love to do that. So like I said, I think Oaken was initially we came out of the idea of helping farms manage their relationship with landowners. Now, if you look at how typical farms do that, there is, as you step into any farming operation, you're likely to see 6 or 7 Excel files, rows of data on landowners, with some data in there about who they are, phone numbers, emails, and addresses. And, all of that is in, maybe as people learn more, they'll create their own Excel files. So you'll see this 20 Excel files with all kinds of data in there, from lease documents to where to find certain things, and yield maps and reports and printed folders and all kinds of things. Think of Oaken as your digital lockbox to bring all of that information into a digital world, right? So we help you do three things really well. Number one, we help you manage your landowner contacts and relationships. So all of that information on names, phone numbers, who's related to whom, emails that you've shared, contacts, phone calls, all of that stuff can be logged into a single place. And that's good, because anyone who's interfacing with that landowner will know pretty much who's spoken to them last and where they need to pick up the thread and speak to that landowner about. So that's number one. The second thing we do really well is your document management and lease management. Again, I mean, there's a lot of back and forth and with attorneys and lawyers and bankers and, the landowners eventually on negotiating leases. And yet there is no good trail of what's happened and, how you need to kind of store that document. And renewal of leases becomes even more complicated if you're sending out paper documents. So we help you store and manage all of your documents relating to land in a single place. So soil sample, yield reports, tiling, any improvements you've done on the land, lease documents, expenses that you've incurred, all of that can be brought together against a single piece of land so that everybody understands, yeah, these are the documents as it relates to this land, and this is what's happened this year. The third thing we do really well is on the payment side. Again, this is a gigantic Excel file that is ever evolving, ever morphing at a farm level. But with Oaken, once your lease documents are in there, your cash flows and everything else are auto-computed. So pretty much, to the T, how much is owed, to whom, which landowner, when, and exactly, even if there's splits in payments, we compute all that and we help you reconcile that with an accounting platform that you may be using as well. So managing that entire life cycle from lease to payment to relationship and then back again to renewal and leasing to payments again, that's the cycle that we're involved in the most. And that's the core of the platform. Along the way, we built some added features to it, added integrations. One of the features we're very proud of is a landowner portal. And the way we like to talk about it is, Rena and Ron, you guys may have a stock portfolio. Pretty much what's happening with that stock every day, corporate actions, dividends. You're able to take a loan against those stocks, things like that. But landowners, land is probably the biggest asset that they will ever own. And yet they don't have any digital way of knowing what's happening on their farmland except for a newsletter or an email or a lease document that comes in once in a while. So this platform that we've created allows you as a farmer to open up a website or a portal to your landowners to help them understand, hey, this is your land. These are the documents that are related to it. This is the cash flow that's coming from your land. These are all the activities that have happened on the land. I'm doing a really good job of stewarding your land, and you guys should probably renew your lease with me. So there are various aspects of this, but that's the ground, like MVP and the core of the platform that we've built so far and the kind of pain points that we solve for.
Can they access that from looking at a map? Like, say, if they have like 10 different pieces, 40 here, 80 here, 160 here, whatever, can they just go on a map, click on that piece of land, and all of that information will be there?
Yeah, so we are getting to that stage. So we've just integrated with an external platform called Acres, and we are able to do that now on our Oaken platform. So to answer your question, there are improvements that we're making every day to make it easier for them to get their data in there, to visualize themselves, their farming operation, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, there are features certainly that are associated with that.
Now, I saw on your website too that you had options for outside of this. And so what are those?
Yeah,
and
no, that's a great
walk
question.
Us through each of those individually.
Absolutely. So with any company, I think just to kind of put a disclaimer onto that, there is a phase of building out a product. You enter the market with a certain product, and then there's an evolution because your customer tells you certain things and then you build a stronger product, but you suddenly discover an adjacent customer who has the same need, and your product with minimal changes can help solve for some needs there as well. So in our case, as we were focused on large farms, we worked with Tom Farms and a couple of other large farms in the US. And suddenly we were speaking with farmland management companies, and they were like, this is interesting. And, this is a problem that we have because we are managing growers on one side and landowners on the other. And we are actually a professional farmland management company. Our only job is to help landowners manage their assets. And wouldn't it be cool to actually give them access to all of this data in a digital way as well as part of our service offering? And so that's why in our website, you will see this offering for farmland management companies. We do the exact same thing, but now that product can be adapted to helping farmland management companies digitize all of their back office and all of this work related to relationships between growers and landowners. So they continue to do what they do, except that now we have this, easy way to manage all of the accounting and lease management and information sharing between various stakeholders. So that's the second version that we came up with. The third version was actually driven by a conversation I had with Rena. So I'm ever grateful for that meal and that lunch that we shared at Des Moines, for that third bucket that you see, because that triggered a thought in my head, which is pretty interesting, and it's led us down a very, very interesting path. And so here's what it's all about. It's the fact that as farms are kind of transitioning farming operations, as well as landowners are transitioning land to the next generation. There are assets that are being transferred, but that information of the farm also needs to be transferred in a meaningful way. And so too with the landowner, the land asset with all of the history of the land, what's been grown on it, the land value and things like that need to be transitioned as well. And there's a specific process through which, as I've come to understand now, that people who, like Rena and yourselves, who help farms and landowners make that transition happen. And so the initial thought was, can we help in that process as well? Because we have a lot of the underlying data around it. We know that land is 80% of the balance sheet of a farm, or it's 100% of pretty much of the balance sheet of a landowner. Now that we know what that land value is and all the dynamics associated with the land and all the workflows that need to go with it, can we build a platform that can help estate planners and transition planners manage that process as well? And so that's been our third iteration. It's at the very start of its journey, Ron. So I don't want to kind of overly pivot on that, but suffice it to say, it's a direction we've seen significant interest in, and we will continue to work on that as we continue with our Oaken journey here.
Yeah. That conversation really gave me a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of how you and your team work. And would you mind just talking about the importance of agility when you are trying to bring an idea to market? Because one of the things that really struck me is every time we'd have a conversation and I'd say, oh, it'd be interesting to see this. I mean, your partner, you could just see, he'd be like, oh yeah, we could do that. And then 3 days later, I'd get a link to say, is this what you meant? And you guys would execute on those things so quickly, even though they really were in some ways quite deviated off of the original kind of idea. So could you talk about just the place that agility and that willingness to pivot has played in your journey with Oaken?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I think there are, we continue to learn through building out Oaken, right? I mean, we are a startup. We can't pretend to be an enterprise customer. I mean, I think one of our advantages is that we can move fast, and if we don't capitalize on that, there's nothing that differentiates us from standard offerings in the market. And if we don't continuously learn and evolve, we are never going to be able to tap into new conversations, new opportunities, and new areas to go into. So for me, that conversation was pivotal because it led me to believe that, this is an industry movement that's coming. And this is something that's a trend in the industry. So that's what I took from that meeting. And I said, I need to be, as Oaken, we need to be at the center, if not the center, but we need to be part of this conversation, right? We've got the assets to be able to do and make ourselves relevant in the space, but we got to find a way to do it meaningfully. And so the core product, to your point, had a lot of the underlying componentry to it and a lot of the underlying wiring to it. And so my ask from my partner was, hey, can we think about it in a different way? And yeah, I think for us, it was a no-brainer from that point on to kind of see what that does. So I would just preface it by saying, though, that agility comes at a price because you're kind of taking focus away from, sometimes what your core mission is. But in our case, fortunately, what happened was that, we continue to work on the core. We were agile with some of the work that we did to show you what would be there. And then we were able to take it to market to test demand for it. And that was a critical step before we actually brought it back to the shop and said, okay, we're going to spend money on building this out because we believe there's a larger opportunity out there. So for us, the agility came in two phases. One was being agile on the front end, showing prototypes and showing and generating demand. But we had to build conviction in the demand before we could take it back to the engineering shop and say, okay, now build this because I think there's a contract on the other end of this and I believe in that. So it's being agile, but I would just caution it by saying, cautiously agile. So you're not burning yourself out of cash and resources, running after different things without building that business case behind it. That's the only thing there.
I think that is something that has really come to the forefront with me just recently in terms of, farming clients who are saying, well, we feel like we need to go invest in this, but we're really not sure what our result is going to be, but we still feel like we need to do it. And so we've been talking quite a bit recently about just that mentality of research and development and knowing having like smaller things that you're working on to sort of test whether you believe, those results are going to come through before you just go and go crazy and start chasing that direction. And, and I think that that's a real discipline for people that are entrepreneurial because they do get very enamored by, kind of the sparkles, right? Like, ooh, this is a shiny new thing. Let me go get it. And then pretty soon we're over here doing that thing and our major enterprise that's sitting over here generating all this money is being unattended. And so I love that you could just highlight that's happening in your world too, that there has to be a little bit of discipline and restraint around just chasing off after a good idea when the moneymaker is sitting there waiting for you. So I think that's a great just example of that.
So when you're out there and you're chasing this idea, or when you sit down with Rena and she says, I think you should do this, or this would be a great thing for you to add, because you're an entrepreneur and because this is just the nature of what you do, you're going to have failures. You're going to have opportunities where you take someone's advice or you take someone's input and it turns out being a total disaster.
Yeah.
How do you communicate that failure with your investor group, with your partners, with the people that work for you, and how do you walk all of your entire team together to come out on the better side of that?
That's a great question. So, it goes back, I think, to I wouldn't say that I have the best practices on that. I think that would be a mistake, but I can just share what we try to do, and I'm sure there's going to be failures along the way, even in the case of what we're doing. So, we're a small company, and we know our resource constraints, right? We know pretty good what we've got to play with and the sandbox that we're operating in. And so I think the focus for us is always like, how do you generate more and more kind of cash or revenue or, as with any company, profitability towards the end of that? Now, if you're going to have a failure on a bet that you're taking, right? I think it's better to fail fast and fail at a lower budget and early on rather than extend it out for a period of time and continue to invest in that failure. So that's the first thing I would just say. Even with when we were having that conversation with Rena, we were actually evaluating three different options for where we can take this company. And it was conversation after conversation with obviously with Rena and a bunch of other people, and then on the other idea with six other people, and on the third idea with more people, and then eventually building yourself a picture of what would be a reasonable chance of success and who all are building in this space, and where can you position your product correctly. So the first thing is, if you're making a bet, make a small bet, figure out whether there's returns, and then invest. The second thing is get as much information as possible before making that bet, so that you know that you may still fail, but at least you have conviction that you've done everything possible to make the right bet at that stage, and you're not living with that regret forever. So that's the second thing. The third thing, I think you asked about communicating this with folks. Again, I've been blessed to have, I think, on the board, Howard, and also with the Purdue University team. I think investors that have come on board as strategics, they have the benefit with some of the capital that comes from the Midwest versus the coastal capital, East or West Coast, is East and West Coast is very impatient for results. And, they want to either see you fail completely or succeed completely. There is no middle path. And that's kind of dangerous when you kind of stepping into ag, because you're dealing with a lot of long-term family operations. So I think I've been lucky enough with the right capital to be able to get to a point where we can try these small, minute experiments and then keep them updated. And they understand that, yeah, we failed at that, we're now moving. So having a team around you that understands it and who you're able to openly communicate some of that with is I think, critical. As it relates to within the team, I communicate that even before they join the team, that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to learn, you need to be on board with that. If you're not on board with that, then this is not the world for you. So they join, like Anwar joined, like he's run some startups before, so he knows the pain of going through some of these failures. The new person who's come on board, 30 years in ag, the first conversation I had with him was, you come from an enterprise environment, but this is startup, we are going to fail. And likelihood is actually that we're going to fail more often than succeed. So you need to be comfortable with that. And then when the failure does happen, it's easier to kind of tell him that, okay, we're going to move away from this and actually lean into this. So yeah, I would just say, micro experiments, limit your resources, get as much information as you can to de-risk yourself, and then have a supportive environment that, that understands the space you're operating in and you're able to convey your messages to, and who are supportive of you. So I've been blessed to have the third, more importantly.
Yeah.
So I'm gathering then that the importance of the investor side, just like the rest of your team, is not only are they vetting you, but you're vetting them.
Yes.
And if someone can bring, I'm assuming that you've had this experience, that if someone can bring a ton of capital, and you're in a position where maybe the timeline is tight, and you really need to raise X amount of capital, if that capital comes and says, look, here it is, but it doesn't feel like the right relationship, do you walk away from that? Do you try to kind of mold and shape that relationship to the way you want it to be? Or do you just completely walk away from it and say, it's not a good fit? That's got to be pretty hard to do when you're looking for capital to do that. So I'm just wondering how that process works.
No, I wish I could say that, you walk away from capital. That's a luxury that few startups have. And we are not going to be in that bucket, but I think you can at least be conscious that even if they do come up with a capital, you can structure your board in a way that makes sense for you and you can still operate in a meaningful manner, right? So you can limit the influence of the capital on the direction of the company. So that's a tool in all board and in your CEO's toolbox. You can also work with that investor to tell them that, yeah, you've brought in this capital. These are the milestones I'm going to reach, or don't have expectations that are, anything apart from that. And that's what we're going to try to deliver for you. But yeah, folks are not, out there. And I think it'll be difficult for us to say no to capital that comes through, but you have the tools in your toolbox to be able to modify the influence that they can have on the direction that you're about to take. So that's something that I would say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested. I know you've kind of got these three tracks that you're developing. What phase are you in now? Are you in, I know you just hired your third team member, which was very exciting to see. Fourth team member, but you actually hired a salesperson.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, where are you at right now? What's coming for 25?
Yeah, no, so I think 23 and a large part of 23 and middle way into 24 was like building the product and, just getting the baseline right and onboarding the first 10, 15 customers. And that's what we did. And I think we did a good job of that, build conviction on the problem and everything else. 25 very much is about doubling down on the product that we've built and scaling what we have already. So that's going to be our focus for 25. And then we have investments into the new part of our business, which is going to lean into like the succession and transition and estate planning. So building that meaningfully with good partners on the other end of it is going to be the second leg of that. The revenue engine is going to be critical. So the core part of it to drive sales with farmland managers and large farms, that's where we're focused on. The salesperson we've got on board brings a wealth of experience in that space. And we're hoping that, that he'll do a good job of that. Whereas we continue to kind of make sure that closely following that engine is another that can be put in place for the future of this company. So 25 is very much going to be about farmland management, farms, getting the revenue in, doubling down on sales, making sure we hit our numbers. No startup can spend forever and get away with it. So yeah. I suspect that we need to show some results for the capital that we've been given.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your clients. So like when you say a large farm, who is it that you're looking for when you're talking about a farm management company? What size? Like just talk about, kind of ideal client or who it is that you're hoping to partner with this year.
Yeah, no, I think so there are two, I would say broadly from a farm perspective, we have some of our customers are like Hopkins Farms, Tom Farms, New Vision Farms. These are the customers that we work with, Walgren or Canyon Farms now. They're anywhere between 3,000 acres to upwards of 20,000 acres in farming operations with multiple lines of business sometimes. And in most cases, they're handling more than 20 odd landowner relationships or more. And that's when it starts getting difficult for them. Tom Farms is well over 100 relationships. And that's just the leases, right? I mean, they have 400 odd names on the platform with family members and everything else. So it's really a complex kind of business if you consider it that way. So in terms of customers, to answer your question, I think typical profile has been row crop, between 3 to anywhere upwards of 3,000 acres with more than about 20 odd leasing relationships is our sweet spot. Where it becomes highly complex, they definitely have a need. And, anything above 10,000 acres is sure shot they're going to see this platform and associate with it. So that's the size on the farm side. On the farmland management size, I think, again, there are two distinct segments that we are seeing. One is highly, enterprise level farm management companies. So we are in discussions with all top 5 farm management companies who have gone the path of a standard CRM or a standard enterprise solution, but are because it doesn't have the ag workflows, they're looking for solutions that can help them with solving some of that. So our solution can certainly address that enterprise level problem for the large farmland management companies that are managing well over 500,000 to 1 million acres or so. Then we have the middle market, which I think is our sweet spot, where it is farm management companies that are erstwhile, they have kind of managed all their business on paper and Excel and all that, are growing nicely or have felt the urge now that they've got so much paperwork that they need to kind of consolidate and build a back office system that can help with all of this relationship management for the digital world. And are looking to buy a system or license a system that helps them do that out of the box. So those would be great fits as well. And we are in discussions with, I think, about 8 or 10 of those guys right now as well. So both of these are great from a farmland management perspective, but the value proposition and where our product fits in is very different. In one case, we are a add-on. In the other case, we become the operating system for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. It really, for someone that's really just been into the market for just a little over 2 years, you have really accumulated quite a lot of very impressive names for sure.
Okay. Well, touch wood. I mean, I think that's more thanks to Purdue than to me. We've been grateful for their involvement and guidance, and I've just kind of gone along for the ride, I feel.
So in this journey, though, I'm always very interested to say, what would, your 1 to 2 pieces of advice be for entrepreneurs that are wishing that they had those, kind of that connection, those opportunities. What would you say to an entrepreneur that's sitting there going, gosh, if I could get that sort of support, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, in terms of just advice, I think, I'm just the first time entrepreneur, and I think it's my first, obviously it's my first company. So I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice per se, but I can share some things that I've learned in my journey, which have kind of stayed with me and will stay with me forever. The first is going to be about the community that you build around yourself. And by that, I mean, I think I've been fortunate to have Purdue, the Haldeman Group, and, Tom Farms and some of the other farms that we work with, and just like you guys and Uncommon Farms. And I'm just blown away every day by the cooperation and the feedback I get and this level of support and interaction that I have with some of them. I'm learning every day. And I think to have that community breaks that lonely cycle that entrepreneurship sometimes is, to know that you can tap into these networks and feel reassured that you're on a path that is meaningful for somebody else beyond yourself as a company. So I think that community building is absolutely, if I start another company, and I'm sure I will, I'm going to lean into a lot of these networks and make sure that I have that done up right. So that's the first part of it. I think the other thing that stayed with me is the team that you're building internally. If you wake up every day and you hate interacting with your team, you have a toxic relationship with your co-founder, or, you can't talk to your head of sales, it's just going to be a messy journey. This is a journey. You jolly well enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to get out of it and tap out of it really fast. So make sure you get the right team in place internally. And again, I think with Ron and with Anwar and with Will, I love speaking with them. I don't know whether they love speaking with me, but I hope they do. But yeah, I enjoy my conversations with them. I'm learning something. We are pushing each other. I think it's a great dynamic. And, that gets me up in the morning and thinking, yeah, this is a team I can see building a company with. It's like a marriage, and, you got to see yourself in it for like 10 years at least, if not longer.
Yeah, that's great
Absolutely.
advice.
Yeah.
I do, we do hear just a lot of people that, wish they could tap into investors, wish they could do, that desire to get, someone else's money, right? To build out your own dream. And it is really interesting, when we get the chance to talk to people that have successfully navigated that, how different the attitude about the use of other people's money and those relationships is from those that have not secured funding, who believe that their idea is really good and it shouldn't matter who they are as people. They should just get the money. And so I appreciate very much your willingness to share some of those things, because I do think that there is no place in the world where people part with their money easily or lightly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really, some of those core things that you're talking about are really important and should never be overlooked. So thank you for just sharing, some of the things that you're learning.
Yeah.
And Shashi, I think too, to your credit, I think that a bright smile and a pleasant positive attitude goes a long way, right? And the humility to know and understand yourself well enough, and to understand human nature enough that none of us know everything. Like it isn't a journey that it's important to embrace that journey rather than being focused always on the end result, which is what we're always trying to get to. But understanding that when we get to that end result, it won't be the end.
Yeah.
There'll always be something else. So,
yeah.
So I think that the words that you share are based much more in wisdom than what you might think.
Yeah. Glad.
So as we come to the end of the podcast today, I am curious though, you've kind of got these three avenues you're pursuing. As you continue to build those out, are you discovering other things that are kind of at the back burner right now, where you get these three engines running? Do you have some other things that are coming?
Oh, I wish I could spout off all the bright ideas that I have, which I think are extraordinarily bright. But my co-founder is kind of, he will probably kill me at the end of this podcast if he hears it and all the ideas that I have. He's been a great kind of modifying kind of, I mean, we have a bunch of ideas, but none of them are vetted, Rena. So I would say our focus now is, I think we've landed on the three that we want to build a meaningful business around. Three is plenty. We just need to get moving, and that's what we're going to be focused on. And we'll see.
You have three huge problems. Like there's no doubt about that. Three huge problems that cause a lot of mistakes. They're hard to organize at the farm level as they sit right now. There's a lot of moving pieces to all of them. And particularly when you start talking about that divesting of ownership, as one guy owns it and then it passes to 4 kids or 5 kids, and it just keeps breaking out into pieces, that does become extraordinarily complex. And to be able to just go in and see the lineage of the ownership of that land and who's coming next and all the kids, and to be able to have some anticipation of who you should be building relationships with if you are renting land. I mean, that is just extraordinarily powerful in terms of just management, and being able to convey to your kids who are farming the land, hey, if something happens to me, here's who you go talk to. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm
glad, I think what you've done is you've built a system that is that really exemplifies the not necessity necessarily, but the absolute importance of building and maintaining relationships. That I personally think that at the end of the day, I mean, of course, numbers matter, of course they do, but at the end of the day, I think what matters the most is the relationships that you have with those landowners, and if you can engage them in a way that makes them feel part of what they're doing, then I think it's just an incredible advantage that really sets yourself as a producer heads and shoulders above everyone else. So kudos for you for understanding that and implementing a system that helps put all that together.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you guys I think I'll take that back to my co-founder and let him know that we got some good reviews here. So he feels encouraged as well.
Just out of curiosity, I'm wondering, so this product then takes the place of perhaps like websites that farms have built with portals in them, where the landowner can like log in and kind of see pictures of the land. So what you're doing is that, right? It would take the place of that, plus have all the data and the
Yep.
contracts and that. So it's basically a more sophisticated model of your one-page website where a
Yeah,
landowner might be able to see what's happening with their farmland. Okay.
that's correct. Yeah, you
Okay.
can do both your back office as well as your customer interactions right from a single platform. So you don't have to build different things to do it. One platform helps you kind of manage all of that work.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And just out of curiosity, since you're a payments guy, do you run your
Yeah.
payments through Oaken or the payment
Well,
or
that's one of the bright ideas I have, Rena, but I have been kind of restrained. I'm raring to go, but my co-founder is kind of holding me back on that one. But that said, I mean, we do process a fair amount of payments, but we don't trigger those payments from our platform. We do help reconcile with your accounting platform. We
yeah.
don't trigger that. Yeah.
Okay. 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 I was just gonna see if you were gonna marry your two worlds together.
It will come. The day will come. He just doesn't know it yet.
We won't share that part with him.
Okay.
Oh my
You can tell
gosh.
him that 30 seconds ago the conversation was over. That's the end.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
God.
Well, we appreciate your time so much today. We always wrap up the podcast with just a little trivia. So are you
Yeah,
ready? Are you feeling
I
super
am.
smart and ready to see if you can beat Google? Because I have a very, very scientific way of coming up with these questions. I just ask Google. So
Okay.
here we go. Since we have been talking about farmland for the majority of our time together, I have two farmland questions. So here we go. Number one, family-owned farms make up what percentage of the total farms in the US?
Is there an option or do we just go for a number?
You just go for a number. Sometimes I'm really sweet if you act like you really have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'll give you the answer, but
Okay.
today I'm not going to do that.
Oh my goodness.
Looking
I
for a
feel drawn.
percentage.
What's your answer, Ron?
My answer is going to be it's between 98 and 99%.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'll go with the same to be on the safer side. That way, if you're wrong, we both come looking out as bad.
See, I like the way you think. This is great.
Well, okay. So here is what Google says. There really is like two answers, and Ron, shockingly, it falls into your range. Anywhere from 96 to 98% are family owned. Which I love that statistic so much with the whole trend and outcry of corporate ownership of farmland.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting.
There is so much of that, and I think the American consumer would be really, really shocked, but also really, really pleased to understand that the vast majority of farms in America are small family farms.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, this one I had to bring closer to Iowa or closer to home because I read this and I was like, even I was shocked by this. So are we ready?
Okay.
And again, this is Google. So what percentage of Iowa farmland is debt free?
I would say it's close. I read this somewhere, and it was a shockingly high percent as I remember it. So I'm going to go with like 80% or so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. Iowa has just an incredible number of farms that are paid for. I think I want to say that number is over 90%.
Okay. The actual number, according to Google, is 84%.
What?
Very good.
I got
Very good.
something right.
Did she give you the answer ahead of time?
No, I don't know what it was, but I remember seeing this somewhere, and I was like, I think it was around 8. I remember 80-ish somewhere, but yeah.
I know it's a shockingly high number.
Yeah,
It's
it was
pretty
a high
amazing.
number.
Thank you so much for just your time and just all of it. This has been a joy. And of course, it's always amazing to see you and
Yeah, same here.
just so excited for your journey. Can't wait to the next catch up with you to see where you're at. And of course, if there's anything that we can do for you, we are just a phone call away.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
looking forward
Thank you,
very
Rena.
much to seeing where Oaken Ag goes.
I appreciate it.
It's going to be a lot of great places. Yeah.
Touch wood. Yeah, hope so. Thank you again.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today on Ag Inspo. And until next time, we will see you. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to the Ag Inspo podcast with Ron Rabou and Rena Striegel. Find Ag Inspo on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. For more information about today's guest or the resources referenced today, please see the show notes listed below. Join us next time when we will meet another inspirational leader who has taken those small steps to bring about really big change.